The Deep Space Research Station, Prometheus 7, hung in the void like a massive metallic spiderweb, its spindly arrays and sensor dishes reaching out into the endless black. Chief Engineer Raven Blackwood stood at the observation deck, nursing her third cup of coffee while watching the approaching alien vessel. The ship's sleek, crystalline design screamed, "We're better than you," in every possible way, which made her roll her eyes so hard she nearly gave herself a headache. "Attention all personnel," the station's AI announced with its usual monotone enthusiasm. "The Xylaxian delegation will be docking in approximately 10 minutes. Please ensure all welcome protocols are in place and remember to smile. They can smell fear." That last part was a joke. Happy Wednesday. Raven snorted coffee through her nose. The AI had been developing a sense of humor lately, though she wasn't sure if that was a feature or a bug. She'd have to check the code later, right after dealing with their esteemed guests. The Xylaxians were the newest species to join the Galactic Commonwealth, and boy did they make sure everyone knew about their superior technological achievements. Their entire civilization had apparently speed-run their way through technological advancement, going from stone tools to quantum mechanics in barely 1,000 years. Impressive? Sure. Annoying how they bragged about it? Absolutely. The docking procedure was flawless, she had to give them that. Their ship connected to the station with the precision of a surgeon, if surgeons glowed in 7 different colors and hummed in perfect harmony. The airlock cycled and outfloated, yes, floated, 3 Xylaxians. They looked like someone had taken a geometry textbook and decided to make its contents organic. Their crystalline bodies refracted light in ways that would make a disco ball jealous, and their movements were so fluid they seemed to ignore the laws of physics entirely. Show-offs. "Welcome to Prometheus 7, Raven said, trying to keep her face professionally neutral despite the overwhelming urge to squint at their brightness. "I'm Chief Engineer Blackwood. I'll be your liaison during the technology exchange." The tallest Xylaxian, whose facets shifted into what might have been a smile, or possibly indigestion, spoke with a voice that sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane. "Ah, yes, the human station. How quaint. I am Grand Architect Zixevrelnakath, but you may call me Zix. These are my associates, whom I'm sure you'll have no need to address directly." Raven felt her eye twitch. She'd dealt with stuck-up alien species before, but these folks were really gunning for the gold medal in the Condescension Olympics. "Well then, Zix," she said, emphasizing the shortened name just to watch them bristle. "Shall we begin with the tour? I'm sure you're eager to see our quantum core research facility, though I should warn you, our primitive safety protocols are quite strict." The Xylaxians exchanged what appeared to be amused glances, hard to tell when their faces were constantly changing geometric patterns, and followed her into the station. Their crystalline forms clinked softly against the metal floor, creating a symphony of tiny bells that was going to drive her absolutely crazy by the end of the day. As they walked, Raven couldn't shake the feeling that this was going to be one of those days that would end up in the station's incidents that should never be repeated, but will definitely become break room stories log. She just hoped the station would still be in one piece by the end of it. The Quantum Core Research Facility occupied the heart of Prometheus 7, a massive spherical chamber that hummed with enough energy to power a small continent. At its center, suspended in a magnetic containment field, floated what looked like a soap bubble having an existential crisis. The experimental quantum core itself, shifting through colors and dimensions that made Raven's eyes water if she looked at it too long. "As you can see," Raven explained, gesturing to the numerous warning signs and safety barriers, "we've implemented multiple redundant safety systems. The core's quantum state is highly unstable, and even minor perturbations could cause—" "Oh, how adorable," Zix interrupted, their crystalline form vibrating with what might have been laughter. "You're still using magnetic containment fields? We abandoned those during our equivalent of your Stone Age." Raven took a deep breath, counting backward from 10 in every language she knew. "With all due respect, Grand Architect, our containment methods are specifically designed for—" Yes, one of Zix's associates chimed in, their tone dripping with artificial sweetness. "Designed for your limited understanding of quantum mechanics, we comprehend. But perhaps you'd be interested in seeing how a truly advanced civilization handles such elementary particles." Before Raven could protest, the Xylaxians glided past the safety barriers, their crystalline bodies somehow bypassing the security sensors. They approached the control console, their faceted appendages hovering over the holographic interface. "Stop!" Raven shouted, rushing forward. The core's quantum matrix is incredibly sensitive. We've spent months calibrating it to operate at barely 15% efficiency, Zix finished, their geometric patterns shifting into what Raven was beginning to recognize as their smuggest configuration. Our preliminary scans indicate that with a few simple adjustments we could increase your output by at least 300%. Those limitations are there for a reason, Raven insisted, pulling up the core's diagnostic displays. Look at these quantum fluctuation readings. The core's internal structure is primitive, all three Xylaxians said in unison as if they'd rehearsed it. I was going to say metastable, Raven retorted, her patience wearing thinner than the station's hull. Touch those controls and you risk causing a cascade failure that could tear a hole in reality itself. Zix's crystalline form sparkled with amusement. Engineer Blackwood, while we appreciate your concern, perhaps you should leave quantum physics to those who evolved beyond using physical keyboards. The core's gentle humming changed pitch slightly, and Raven's eyes snapped to the monitoring systems. The quantum fluctuations were increasing, their patterns becoming more erratic. The core's responding to your presence, she warned, pointing to the readings. Your crystalline structures are creating quantum resonance patterns that will only improve its performance, Zix's second associate interjected. Our bodies naturally harmonize with quantum fields. It's one of our many evolutionary advantages. Raven rubbed her temples, wondering if it was possible to die from sheer frustration. Look, I'm going to be extremely clear here. If you mess with those controls, you're going to destabilize the entire system. I've spent 2 years working with this technology, and I know exactly how temperamental it can be. 2 years, Zix's patterns shifted into something that resembled a condescending smile. Why, that's approximately how long it took our younglings to master quantum engineering in their primary education pods. That does it, Raven declared, stepping between the Xylaxians and the console. As chief engineer of this station, I am officially revoking your access to this facility. This isn't about pride or technological superiority. It's about preventing a disaster that could turn this entire sector into quantum confetti. The Xylaxians' crystalline forms darkened slightly, their patterns becoming more angular and sharp. Engineer Blackwood, Zix said coldly, I believe you're forgetting that this is a technology exchange. We have full authority from the Galactic Commonwealth to optimize your systems. As they moved toward the console again, Raven had the distinct feeling that the universe was about to teach someone a very expensive lesson in humility. She just hoped the station's insurance policy covered alien-induced quantum catastrophes. What happened next could only be described as a perfect storm of arrogance meeting quantum physics. And quantum physics had a bone to pick. The Xylaxians moved in perfect synchronization, their crystalline forms creating a prismatic light show as they surrounded the control console. Before Raven could even finish saying, "Don't you dare," they had already interfaced with the system, their bodies pulsing with self-satisfied luminescence. "Observe, Engineer Blackwood," Zix announced triumphantly, "as we demonstrate proper quantum core management." The core's gentle hum turned into something that sounded suspiciously like a cat trying to hack up a hairball made of space-time. The soap bubble appearance began to stretch and twist, forming shapes that would have given MC Escher a migraine. Warning, the station's AI announced, somehow managing to sound both bored and terrified simultaneously. Quantum core stability at 47% and dropping. Also, reality appears to be having technical difficulties. Please stand by. Raven leaned against a nearby railing, crossing her arms. You know, I'd say I told you so, but I think the laws of physics are about to do that for me. The first sign that things were going terribly wrong was when one of Zix's associates suddenly found themselves speaking in reverse time, answering questions that hadn't been asked yet, and asking questions about disasters that hadn't happened so far. The second sign was when the coffee in Raven's forgotten mug began floating upward, reconstituting itself into beans, which then proceeded to dance a rather enthusiastic salsa. Minor quantum fluctuations, Zix insisted, though their crystalline form was vibrating with what looked suspiciously like panic. Perfectly normal during optimization procedures. Is the ceiling melting also normal? Raven asked sweetly, pointing upward where the metal was indeed dripping upward, forming interesting stalactites that defied gravity and good taste. The core's containment field started flickering, each pulse accompanied by a sound that resembled a dubstep artist having a breakdown. Reality began hiccuping, first small ones, then the kind that made entire sections of the station temporarily exist in multiple dimensions at once. Warning, the AI chimed in again. Multiple breaches in the space-time continuum detected. Tuesday is now occurring simultaneously with Friday, which is causing severe calendar errors. Also, the breakroom microwave has achieved sentience and is demanding voting rights. The Xylaxians frantically moved their appendages over the console, their previous grace replaced by movements that looked like a geometric panic attack. "This is impossible," Zix's second associate shrieked, their crystalline form cycling through colors faster than a disco light at a rave. "The quantum harmonics should be stabilizing." "Emergency protocols initiated," the AI announced, deploying quantum containment measures. "Also, someone please tell the microwave that organizing a labor union is not an appropriate response to existential awareness." Blast doors began slamming shut throughout the facility, some of them in directions that doors really shouldn't be able to close in. Emergency lights started flashing, though half of them were illuminating scenes from possible futures where the station had been converted into a giant spacefaring disco ball. Raven watched as the Xylaxians' attempts to fix the situation only made things worse. Their crystalline bodies were now resonating with the destabilized core, causing them to temporarily exist in probability states where they had made better life choices. "You know what the real kicker is?" Raven called out over the increasing chaos, having to raise her voice over what sounded like reality itself throwing a temper tantrum. "That big red button you overrode? The one labeled Emergency Quantum Dampening System in 17 different languages, including interpretive dance? It's looking pretty good right now, isn't it?" The station shuddered as another reality hiccup rippled through it. In one section of the corridor, gravity decided to take a coffee break. In another, time started flowing sideways, causing several crew members to walk backward through their own conversations. "Warning," the AI said, now speaking in what sounded like a mix of Shakespearean English and Valley Girl slang. "Like quantum core stability is totally at 23% and dropping, forsooth. Also, the space-time continuum is being super extra right now. Would it help if I read some calming poetry? I've been working on my haikus." Zix's third associate, who had been quiet until now, suddenly spoke up. Perhaps we should have listened to the humans' warnings." "You think?" Raven shot back, dodging a temporal eddy that was trying to age her coffee mug into a small oak tree. "But hey, don't let me stop you. You're the ones who mastered quantum engineering in primary school, remember? Though I have to say, none of my kindergarten physics experiments ever threatened to turn a space station into abstract art." The core's containment field gave one final dramatic flicker before failing completely. As alarms blared and reality prepared to throw its biggest tantrum yet, Raven couldn't help but add, "So about those primitive safety protocols." The quantum core, now fully destabilized, had decided to turn the laws of physics into more of a physics suggestion box. Reality rippled outward from the facility in waves, each one bringing its own unique flavor of chaos to Prometheus 7. In the hydroponics bay, the tomato plants had developed consciousness and were staging a rebellion against their cucumber overlords. The gym equipment had merged into a single, gigantic exercise machine that kept changing its function every 3 seconds, from treadmill to bench press to what looked suspiciously like a medieval torture device. "Our calculations were perfect," Zix insisted, though their crystalline form had taken on a distinctly greenish tinge that suggested otherwise. "This is simply a catastrophic failure," Raven suggested helpfully while typing commands into her tablet with one hand and catching her coffee mug as it tried to evolve into a small marine mammal with the other. "A quantum disaster? A textbook example of why we should listen to the humans who actually work with this technology every day?" The second Xylaxian, who was now partially existing in 4 different dimensional planes at once, finally cracked under the pressure. "I've never actually worked with a quantum core before," they wailed, their crystalline form clouding over with shame. "I just read about them in theoretical papers." "What?" Raven paused her typing to stare at them incredulously. "None of us have," the third one admitted, currently phase-shifting between solid and liquid states. "Our civilization bypassed this technology entirely. We We just didn't want to admit it. Raven pinched the bridge of her nose, feeling a headache that existed in at least 3 temporal dimensions simultaneously. So let me get this straight. You came onto my station, ignored my warnings, overrode my safety protocols, and messed with highly unstable quantum technology based on theoretical knowledge. It seemed much simpler in the research papers, Zix muttered, their formerly imperious voice now several octaves higher and occasionally speaking in reverse. The station shuddered again as another reality wave pulsed through it. In the corridor outside, a group of maintenance robots had spontaneously developed a deep appreciation for interpretive dance and were performing their version of Swan Lake using mops and vacuum cleaners as props. "Warning," the AI announced, now speaking in what sounded like a mix of Morgan Freeman and a chipmunk on helium. "Reality cohesion at 15% and dropping. The laws of physics are now more like guidelines, really. Also, the space-time continuum has filed a formal complaint about workplace harassment." Raven watched as a section of the wall briefly turned into jelly, then back into metal, then into what appeared to be a living mural depicting the entire history of dance music. She needed to think fast. The station was rapidly becoming a modern art installation titled Quantum Physics Revenge. "Okay," she said, pulling up the core's schematics on her tablet while dodging a temporal eddy that was trying to turn her shoelaces into spaghetti. "First things first, we need to contain this before the entire station becomes a modern art museum's worst nightmare." "But the containment field has failed completely," Zix's second associate pointed out, their voice echoing from both the past and future simultaneously. "Yes, thank you for that brilliant observation," Raven retorted, furiously typing calculations. "Any other obvious statements you'd like to make? Perhaps you'd like to point out that water is wet, or that ignoring safety protocols was a bad idea." In the background, the AI had started broadcasting a mix of emergency alerts and cooking recipes. "Warning, quantum fluctuations at critical levels. Also, here's a lovely recipe for quantum-shifted souffle. Note that eggs may spontaneously transform into rubber ducks during preparation." The station's internal gravity chose that moment to reorient itself according to what appeared to be interpretive modern dance choreography. Raven found herself standing on what was previously the wall, while the Xylaxians floated in patterns that would have made a geometry teacher weep. "Our bodies!" Zix suddenly exclaimed, their crystalline form now resembling a Klein bottle having an identity crisis. "The quantum resonance is affecting our molecular structure." "Oh, you mean the same resonance I warned you about?" Raven asked, somehow managing to type while floating sideways. "The one that was specifically mentioned in the safety protocols you dismissed as primitive." The third Xylaxian, now existing partially in a dimension where everything was shaped like various types of pasta, raised what might have been a hand, or possibly a breadstick. "In our defense, our educational simulations never mentioned this kind of quantum instability." "That's because they were simulations," Raven shouted, her patience finally snapping like a rubber band in zero gravity. "Real quantum cores don't care about your perfect theoretical models. They're like cats, unpredictable, potentially deadly, and extremely bad at following instructions." As if to prove her point, the core pulsed again, and suddenly everyone in the room could taste the color blue and smell the concept of jazz music. The maintenance robots in the corridor had moved on from Swan Lake to a particularly ambitious interpretation of West Side Story. "Warning," the AI chimed in again, now speaking in what sounded like a sports commentator's voice. "And there goes reality with another spectacular breach. The laws of physics are really taking a beating today, folks. The probability field is down to 12%, and, oh, what's this? The breakroom microwave has just declared itself emperor of all processed foods. Stay tuned for more updates from this exciting match between quantum physics and common sense." Raven looked at her tablet, then at the core, then at the increasingly panicked Xylaxians, and finally at her coffee mug, which had somehow started brewing quantum espresso that existed in all possible states of caffeination simultaneously. A plan was forming in her mind, a crazy, possibly stupid, definitely human plan. "I think I know how to fix this," she announced, already dreading the paperwork this would generate, "but you're really not going to like it." "Will it stop us from existing in multiple probability states?" asked one of Zix's associates, who was currently experiencing Tuesday and Saturday at the same time. "Probably," Raven replied, pulling up the emergency protocols on her tablet. "But first, I need you all to admit, for the official record, that human safety protocols aren't so primitive after all." The Xylaxians exchanged looks across several dimensions before nodding their crystalline heads in defeat. Sometimes, the most advanced solution was admitting you should have read the manual. Raven's probably stupid but possibly brilliant plan started with her reaching into her tool belt and pulling out humanity's greatest contribution to engineering, a roll of duct tape. The Xylaxians, still phase-shifting between dimensions, stared at it as if she'd produced a small nuclear weapon. "Is that adhesive material?" Zix asked, their crystalline form vibrating with disbelief. "This," Raven said, giving the roll a loving pat, "is how humans fixed the Apollo 13 mission, built half of Mars Base 1 and kept my college apartment from falling apart. Never underestimate the power of duct tape and desperation." She followed this up by retrieving a handful of paperclips from her pocket. The Xylaxians watched in horror as she began straightening them out with practiced ease. "Warning," the AI announced, now speaking in what sounded like a game show host voice. "Quantum stability continues to deteriorate, and for our next challenge, contestants will have to deal with spontaneous reality shifts while, oh my, it appears Engineer Blackwood is implementing what we like to call the human special. Let's watch." Raven worked quickly, her hands moving with the confidence of someone who had fixed far too many things with far too few resources. She began creating an impromptu quantum resonance array, using the straightened paperclips, connecting them with precise lengths of duct tape. "The quantum harmonics need to be redistributed," she explained, mostly to herself, but loud enough for the increasingly bewildered Xylaxians to hear. "If we can't contain the core's energy, we'll have to redirect it." "With office supplies?" the second Xylaxian asked, their voice shifting through several octaves of incredulity. "Listen," Raven said while carefully measuring out another strip of duct tape, "your highly advanced civilization might have skipped the figure-it-out-as-you-go phase of technological development, but humans, we perfected it. Sometimes the most elegant solution is also the stupidest-looking one." She continued working, occasionally dodging temporal eddies and reality warps. At one point, she had to pause to prevent her makeshift array from becoming sentient and trying to unionize with the break-room microwave. "Quantum stability now at 8%, the AI helpfully informed them. "Also, the laws of thermodynamics have filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences with reality." "You know what your problem is?" Raven asked the Xylaxians as she connected another paperclip to her growing array. "You evolved past the point of having to improvise. Humans, we're still held together by coffee, spite, and the stubborn refusal to admit something's impossible." The Xylaxians watched in fascination as she continued to build what looked like a child's art project, but was actually a surprisingly sophisticated quantum energy redistribution system. Their crystalline forms had stopped shifting quite so violently, seemingly captivated by the sheer audacity of what they were witnessing. "The quantum resonance patterns," the third Xylaxian observed, their scientific curiosity temporarily overriding their panic. "You're using the metal in the paperclips to create a harmonic feedback loop." "Bingo," Raven grinned, adding another carefully measured strip of duct tape. "And the adhesive compound in the tape acts as a quantum insulator. Is it elegant? No. Will it work? Maybe. Will it make every physicist in the galaxy cry? Absolutely." She worked for another few minutes, occasionally muttering calculations under her breath and making adjustments that seemed to be based on equal parts advanced quantum mechanics and what she called her engineering gut feeling. Finally, she stood back to admire her creation, a bizarre spider's web of paperclips and duct tape that surrounded the quantum core's containment field. "This is either going to save the station," she announced, "or create a modern art masterpiece worth millions. Either way, someone's getting a story out of this." With a flourish that she'd definitely practiced in front of a mirror at some point, Raven activated her makeshift array. The paperclips began to hum in harmony. The duct tape glowed with an inner light that definitely wasn't supposed to be possible, and the quantum core's wild fluctuations started to stabilize. "Oh my," the AI commented, sounding genuinely impressed. "Quantum stability increasing, reality cohesion returning to normal parameters. The break-room microwave has agreed to step down as Emperor and return to its regular duties, though it would like to keep the title Lord of Leftovers for ceremonial purposes." The Xylaxians stared in absolute silence as the chaos around them gradually subsided. The gravity returned to its proper orientation. The walls stopped trying to become abstract art, and the maintenance robots concluded their performance with a surprisingly moving rendition of "Don't Stop Believin'," using mop handles as microphones. But, Zix struggled to find words, their crystalline forms cycling through patterns that suggested their entire worldview was being reorganized. This solution involves no advanced quantum field manipulation, no complex containment algorithms, no bullshit, Raven suggested helpfully, patting her roll of duct tape. Sometimes the best solution is the simple one. Sure, it might not look pretty, it might not win any awards for technological advancement, but it works, and in engineering, working is what matters. The quantum core had settled into a stable hum, its appearance returning to its normal soap bubble shimmer. The paperclip and duct tape array continued to redirect the excess energy, creating a light show that was actually quite pretty in a science meets kindergarten craft time sort of way. "I believe," the third Xylaxian said slowly, their voice filled with something that sounded suspiciously like respect, "we may have been somewhat hasty in our dismissal of human engineering methods." "You think?" Raven asked, raising an eyebrow as she made one final adjustment to her array. "Tell you what, next time you're about to dismiss something as primitive, remember this moment. Remember how a roll of duct tape and some paper clips just saved an entire space station from becoming a quantum physics blooper reel?" She paused, then added with a grin, "Also, I'm totally submitting this for a patent. I'm going to call it the Quantum Stabilization Array using Common Office Supplies, or QSOCOS for short. The look on the patent office's face is going to be priceless." The Xylaxians, their crystalline forms now properly existing in just one dimension again, could only nod in agreement. Sometimes it turned out the most advanced civilization wasn't the one that skipped steps, but the one that knew how to use every tool at their disposal, even if that tool came from the dollar store. In the aftermath of what would become known as the Great Quantum Paperclip Incident, Prometheus 7 gradually returned to its version of normal. The maintenance robots had retired from their brief but passionate career in performing arts, though they could occasionally be caught doing pirouettes while mopping. The break room microwave had stepped down from its position as emperor, but retained a certain regal air when reheating leftovers. The Xylaxian delegation stood in the docking bay, their crystalline forms notably less sparkly than when they'd arrived. Their ship had required some minor repairs after reality had briefly turned it into a giant disco ball, an improvement in some crew members' opinions. "We've prepared a full report for the Galactic Commonwealth," Zix announced, their voice lacking its earlier condescension. "We will be recommending some revisions to the technology exchange protocols." "Oh," Raven asked innocently, holding her fresh cup of coffee, which thankfully was no longer existing in quantum superposition. "Do tell." "Specifically," the second Xylaxian added, "a new requirement that all visiting delegations must complete a comprehensive safety training course, and—" They paused, their geometric patterns shifting, in what looked like embarrassment, "a mandatory class on the proper use and applications of adhesive tape." "We've also included a formal recommendation," the third Xylaxian chimed in, "that human engineering methods be included in the Commonwealth standard technical curriculum, particularly the sections on emergency repairs and improvised solutions." Raven couldn't help but smile. Well, how the turntables have turned. The station's AI chose that moment to make an announcement. "Attention all personnel. New safety protocols have been uploaded to the station's database. Highlights include the importance of reading warning labels, why we don't override safety systems, and duct tape, a quantum physicist's best friend. Also, the hydroponics bay tomatoes have voluntarily agreed to return to their non-sentient state, though they request that we remember their brief revolution fondly." As the Xylaxians prepared to board their ship, Zix turned back to Raven. "Engineer Blackwood, we owe you an apology. Our overconfidence could have had catastrophic consequences. Your solution, while unconventional, demonstrated a level of innovative thinking we had forgotten was possible." "Just remember," Raven replied, raising her coffee mug in a mock salute, "sometimes the most advanced solution is knowing when to use the simple one. Also, maybe next time start with hello instead of implied technological superiority, just a thought." The Xylaxians boarded their ship, their departure notably more subdued than their arrival. As the ship disconnected from the station, Raven made her way to her office to complete her final task. The official incident report, station log, chief engineer's addendum. Following today's events, I can confidently state that quantum physics continues to have a twisted sense of humor. Alien civilizations can indeed learn humility, and office supplies remain humanity's greatest contribution to advanced engineering. New safety protocols have been implemented, including a strict no quantum core modifications without coffee present policy. The emergency quantum stabilization array, patent pending, remains in place as none of our quantum physicists can explain why it works, and nobody wants to risk removing it. In related news, station requisition forms now include a specific line item for emergency duct tape. Recommend updating all engineering manuals to include the phrase, "When in doubt, add more duct tape," as a fundamental principle. PS to whoever in supply keeps ordering the generic brand duct tape, we literally work with quantum physics. Spring for the good stuff. End log. Raven leaned back in her chair, enjoying the now normal hum of the station around her. On her desk, next to her coffee mug, sat a small crystalline decoration, a gift from the Xylaxians. It caught the light in complex patterns, forming words in the air. Sometimes the most advanced civilization is the one that remembers its basics. She couldn't help but smile. After all, it wasn't every day you got to teach a hyper-advanced alien species the value of duct tape and stubbornness, humanity's two greatest technological achievements.